Hello and welcome back to the podcast. I am joined again, as normal, by my two co-hosts, Craig and Richard. We've got another person as well who's going to be joining us. We're going to talk about that in this particular chat today as well. But before we get to all of that, how are you doing, Richard?
Yeah, good. Thanks, mate. Not bad at all. Seems like it's been a few weeks. I don't know when the last time we had a chat, but it's been a while. I've missed loads of stuff.
Time.
Yeah. Been away for a week, and due to various other commitments with investigations and other bits and pieces we've got going on. Yeah, it seems like it's been forever, but yeah, looking forward to a nice little catch up. So yeah, all good, mate. Thank you.
It has been a while, and we've got a lot to catch up on.
Yeah.
While we delve into that, how are you doing, Craig?
Yeah, good. It's I feel like it's same old story every time I come on here. We go, it's busy, work's busy, it's nice, but good to catch up. And we go in that circle, but we are all unfortunately in the middle of a rat race, aren't we? Of like a busy season, a busy time of year, and it's nice. I've had some interesting designs to look at recently, and they've challenged me a bit. To be fair, I've been doing some traders' offices and moving financial investment traders and stock market traders building to building, and potentially even somebody from America to the UK. So that's been intricate to support their process of moving these Wolf of Wall Street type organizations into their needs. Because and we'll probably delve into some of these another day or something, but looking at the fact of when all of a sudden there's a world where people can't have any power downs, UPSs have to be in play. I mean, they can't have power downs that much that for every two traders, they have an assistant who goes and gets everything they need 24/7 so they don't have to leave the desks.
Wow.
And you've got to talk about power supplies and design and sizing and floor plates. It's been an interesting one, I would say.
So where do you even start with that? That's an interesting one to lead in with the podcast. When you're designing that, there's a whole world of pressure there, isn't there? I guess not just on the power. Are you doing the data as well? I assume data is quite important to these kind of companies as well.
Yeah, and it's hard, isn't it? Because you get I get a blank GA, like a general arrangement drawn, if you like, of how they want their desks to be laid out, and sort of you don't get a huge amount more information in that. So we've gone and validated one particular one. We've gone and validated the building. We've gone and looked at the power supplies, coming up the buzz bar into the tap offs, and it's sort of working out what assumed power you think they need. Because at this point in time, I don't know what computers are putting in. I don't know what the manufacturers, the leakage, that sort of stuff. So you're designing sort of underfloor power. They've got two computers per desk with 6 monitors, and you're sort of trying to make an assumption as to what computer is used. And then you talk about diversity. Well, they don't leave their desks, and there's 90 traders' desks and 30, I think it's 30 assistants' desks. And you go, well, okay, the 90 traders don't leave their desks. The 30 assistants do. But how do you size diversity with that sort of installation? And you go, well, the computer might not use full power to run the whole time it's on. One computer's running, maybe one's off as a backup. I don't know. So you have to start to make assumptions, don't you, and sort of qualify your design and kind of go down that process. And I've had to generally, and I'm not saying this is a size that people should use, but generally I allow sort of 2 amps a desk to allow for a computer to be installed. When it's come to this, I'm sort of at like 4 or 5 amps a desk, and I've got to size tap-offs and buzz bars for installs I don't know. And then you can go, we haven't necessarily on this one, but then you start to go, well, what does a UPS need to back up? Just the comms room and the data? Or does it need to back up the tracks of the traders to make sure they don't go down? Does it need to back up the lighting? Because if they have a, power cut and it goes down, they don't plan to stop working.
Air conditioning, I guess, as well, for like the server rooms and stuff.
Yeah, 100%. So does emergency lighting regs have to change now and say, well, okay, we have to... All of these are questions because every installation is different, but just this is a process I sort of go through as well. Do I need to increase emergency lighting? Because if they're working for 3-4 hours an emergency lighting because they've not backed the lighting up on the UPS because the UPS is not big enough. They still want to work. So how low can you get the emergency lux to be enough to work with their screens that they can still function as a business? Because if a trading organization goes down, even I guess for a minute, that's probably, I don't know about stock, but I imagine that could be quite a costly endeavor if you don't play that game, which is what I see stock as a game in my head. I don't really know that. They push numbers on a screen that doesn't exist as far as I'm concerned. But
exactly that. It's magic stuff what those guys and girls do. We've got a customer who's not in stocks, but like do something in finance. And the owner of that business, they've only got like, I think 10, 15 members of staff. He was saying for every hour they're not functioning, it costs them 15,000 quid. And that's just like a small kit. I think they do like credit checking and stuff, something to do with loans. I'm not really sure, but you can see how those numbers soon add up, can't you? And I guess in your design, you're considering like your RCD protection. Is it floor box RCDs or is this your final circuits and RCDs? Is there any AFDDs? Because you want to protect these things and keep them safe, but you could have, we term it nuisance tripping. It trips for a reason, but it's like in the design, isn't it? So I guess you're trying to mitigate that as well.
Yeah, and then at that point, what other protective measures do you bring in? Do you go down the line of, I know before anyone shoots me, there's no such thing really as a clean earth anymore, but do you have to start looking at clean earth buzz bars? Do you have to start looking at 2 buzz bars per desk, one computer on one set, one computer on the other? Like, how do you, is one essential, non-essential? How do you, there's a whole sinkhole is all I could call it. You could go down on that sort of design and pull that pace. And I think I'm still probably knee deep and only halfway into it, to be honest. Like, because every time you think you answer a question, there's not a question. There's not the answer. There's another question. But then at the end of the day, there's still a budget to all these things, isn't there? Regardless of what they do as a company, they're not just chucking money at it. People that have money don't just chuck money at things with no good cause, do they?
No.
That's us silly people that don't have money. We think we're going to make it big. So, yeah, everything's got to be justified. And they're financially smart people. These people are doing stock. They're not silly.
No.
So they know what they're buying. They know what they want. They know what they're getting at the end. And yeah, it's interesting. It's one we'll maybe look at some point as to, not on a particular installation, but maybe we'll look at that sort of, well, UPS or batteries, because that's all it is at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know, what do we consider when people are doing these things? What do we involve in that process? Because it's been an interesting journey, definitely.
I think that's a good one for us to maybe revisit the little design series we did. And we could even just do it for a couple of workstations or something and work back through from there, start to finish, maybe just as an idea of a future episode.
Yeah. What about Richard will do that because he knows.
That's it. Richard can design it and then you can copy it, mate. That's what I was thinking. How you been doing, Richard, in the world of ESF? What's been going on for you?
Well, I was not in last week, obviously, but today I've been to the JTL National Awards.
Oh, nice.
Which was really good at the Royal Armouries in Leeds. So I've had a little trip up there,
Lovely,
which was quite nice. And I think it's the first time that they've done something like this, where they recognise apprentice of the year or up and coming learner of the year, tutor of the year, training officer of the year, and it was nice to see that they're being recognised for the good work that they're doing, the attitudes to learning and all the rest of it. And it was really good. There's some good awards handed out. Covered a little bit of their mechanical engineering, plumbing apprentices as well. But it was really good. Lovely venue. Bumped into a few familiar faces as always. It was nice to see Mr. Staniforth there. Didn't catch up with him at CEF because I was away. Our friend Kevin was there from EAR. So talking about design, he was talking about some changes that he's making to their level 4 qual, which me and Dave did earlier in the year. I think the project's been the same for a number of years, which is probably similar to Sitting Girls. They change them every now and again. So there's some work going on in the background there. Ruth Devine was there. It was nice to talk to Ruth. She's still fighting the fight, obviously, with rogue traders and all that type of stuff. And just before I left, I did some work with Dudley Trading Standards, where I was required to be an expert witness on a case where a young apprentice had gone and done some work for someone. So someone had advertised on Facebook Marketplace. There was after a Sparky to add some additional sockets in to a couple of the bedrooms. They were doing some decorating and wanted a few sockets in and a light in the loft. So this young chap went and done the work, and the homeowner didn't think anything of it. He was in a company van, all logoed up, and was in company uniform, all that jazz. Went and had a look at it, give her a price, told her that she'd have to replace the consumer unit and a few other bits and pieces. So give her a proper quote, give her a proper price. There was a few other people that priced for it as well, but the only reason she chose this chap because he could do it the quickest. So the homeowner then accepted the price. This chap went with another chap, and they did all the work in a day. So then it's the same old story. She was then asking for the certification for the work, and of course notification with building control, which never came about. She then received an electrical installation certificate with a different company name on, and she began to become a little bit aware of, or cautious as to something's not quite right here. So she contacted Trading Standards, and Trading Standards then contacted us to assist them, first of all, to establish whether either of these two chaps were sufficiently experienced, competent, and all the rest of it to do the work. And secondly, in regard to the certification, was it worth the paper it was written on and stuff? And there's quite a lot of work involved with that. I got involved with that. I went out and done a full day inspection on the property just to ensure, because ultimately, was it safe for continued use? We don't know, because no one's been. And so I went, done a report on it, spent a lot of work with that. And in the end, this was last year, and just before I went away, they prosecuted the two of them for misrepresentation and producing false documents in terms of false certification. I think they got fined nearly $2,000 each. So quite good, really. And the first chap hadn't finished his apprenticeship, so he wasn't qualified, and he'd left his apprenticeship. The chap that he took with him had been on the tools for many, many years, but he'd got an old knowledge qualification which didn't fit with EAS. He'd never done AM2, and he'd got no MVQ. So, technically, in the eyes of the law, EAS, was he suitably skilled, qualified, experienced to be doing the work? No, he wasn't. So actually, it was a good result. I was quite chuffed with that, because I spent a lot of time and a lot of work, with Trading Standards to try and make sure that, people that don't have the correct skills, qualification, knowledge, and all the rest of it do this type of work, because ultimately they're taking work off qualified people like ourselves, competent people that try and do the right thing, charge the right money and do the right work. So good result, to be fair. So I think we're going to be doing some work on comms with that to get that message out there. I think Trading Standards are also going to release some information, and so a test, actually, because I spoke to Ruth about that today, because when it was all going on, I had a chat with Ruth about it as well, because the problem is with Google is you ask, what is a competent electrician, you'll get 10 different answers, and it's very difficult to obtain or, get the right information. But ultimately, it would be down to, a judge in a court of law to determine if you've done enough, to be competent and have the right experience and all the rest of it, regardless of 7671 and EAWR and all the rest of it. So it was quite a complex thing, but I'm glad to see that, for the homeowner as well, because they got compensated for it. They got a proper CPS scheme registered contractor in to go and put some of the bits and pieces right. I don't know if they got reimbursed some of the money. Hopefully they did. But ultimately, it poses a proper message out there that you shouldn't be doing the work unless you've got sufficient experience, knowledge, and all the rest of it, and insurances and stuff like that. So it was,
it also shows that the industry does do stuff when things do go wrong, because that often gets pushed out into social media very often, that when these things go wrong, who's policing it, who's holding others to account. And you've done that there, and the CPS has picked up the bill, it sounds like it, to put that right. And that is exactly how it should be when those things do go wrong. And getting that message out there, I think, could be a great thing. Rich, fair play to all of you for doing that. I wasn't aware you'd not mentioned you were on with that, to be honest. That would have been a good one to know about, but good on you.
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of work on the product side with Trading Standards, obviously, because there's so many, dodgy products and bits and pieces you can buy from anywhere. But similarly, you know, you do get, I don't know if you get this yourself, Mark, where people will, you know, ask for electricians, plumbers, whatever it is on Facebook Marketplace and other places like that. But, you know, we need to do more to make people aware of the fact that we always try to make sure that people use a registered competent electrician, but people will go the cheapest generally. But this wasn't the case, which was interesting this time. He wasn't the cheapest. It was just the fact that he could do it the quickest. But when he did the work, it was in his company van and his boss didn't know. So it looked legit, if that makes sense. And he used another friend of his certification, must have had the password to his certification software. That's where that fake certificate come from. But it's fraud, isn't it? And ultimately, the worrying part was at the time, we didn't know what they'd done was safe, actually, because fake certificate. I'm not saying that it's difficult to wire a house, because it's not. Don't get me wrong. You know, this chap's been in industry for a long time. And what I inspected wasn't unsafe, really. There's a couple of grommets missing and a few bits and pieces, but nothing that was potentially dangerous or dangerous at all. It wasn't bad. It wasn't a bad installation, but should he have been doing it? No. Should he have issued full certification? No. Never got notified to building control. So that was an issue. I think they've resolved that now. But as you quite rightly say, we do fight the fight where we can. And that just goes to show for anyone, apprentices that are listening or learners that are listening, that you might think, I don't want to be doing this for another 3 or 4 years, and I'm not paid a lot, and I've got to do the science and principles unit, I've got to do all this stuff. But ultimately, you'll have everything you need then to be able to defend yourself in a court of law or in a case like this. So it is good, and you're quite right. I was quite pleased with that. I was quite proud of that. So as soon as we've got some more information on it, because I'm not 100% sure exactly what we can put out there, I've got to check with the lady from Trading Standards, but I'll share it. But yeah, it was good, very good.
I think there's two things to pick up with that, really, isn't there? There's two things for me to pick up. How, as a business and a customer, I suppose, how, as a business, are you ensuring that competent electrician statement is maintained? Because to me, it's more than just a gold card. I get a gold card as an initial measure, and I respect my gold card and I value it, and all of those things. I'm not knocking a gold card. But I got a gold card, don't know how many years ago now, a few years. If you haven't done anything since then, are you still competent? Yeah. This whole, we do it every day on site, to me, and this will be unpopular, I'm sure, but to me, that is not CPD. Because if you do it wrong on site every day, how are you getting that better? How are you being informed of that? And for like Mark and the owner of my company, we have to go and prove every year to like the NIC or NAPA or whoever you're doing how you are competent. And I know over the last couple of years, and I think this is something that Paul's working quite hard on at the NIC, is that a big part of our assessment is company CPD. Can you show us the ongoing development that you have done with your staff and you have monitored all the way from apprentices all the way through to our project managers and myself and my team in the office doing design and that sort of stuff? How are we maintaining that development? And I guess maybe there's something we could do about advising customers about that, about what competent means, because turning up with an NIC sticker on a van doesn't necessarily mean the person in there is competent, does it? And it's a hard battle, because every year, boys on site don't want to go home and spend hours reading books and podcasts and everything else. They're knackered. They've done it all day. It's hard enough. But how do you instill that culture, I guess, is one bit. And then the other bit more for apprentices is pay attention to science and principles. Otherwise, you'll struggle like me today. I had to size a power factor correction unit and had to get the old trigonometry triangle back out for KVAR.
Good days, yeah. Good days. Yeah.
It's that I couldn't do that without getting AI on it, Craig. I'd have been on ChatGPT to be fair. So good on you for getting the books out and doing it manually. But yeah, I mean that's I'm really pleased to hear that you've had that result, Richard, and that there is people there who are policing these things when they go wrong, because you'll see it all the time where someone's found some rubbish work and then they say there's no point reporting it because nothing happens. you just proved that wrong. Things can happen if stuff is reported and the right people start looking into it. Full credit to you on that. You and the team at ESF are doing some great stuff at the minute. And speaking of that, I bumped into Dave at CEF Live, and Mr. Buist sat in the top corner as well. We had a little wander around the show for a short while, and it was a really good one. And it ties in with the CPD as well, because Darren and Dave led the show from the CEF Tech Talks. I think they do that better than anybody. I think, did they put a post up? There was like 4,000 people took in those tech talks through the 2 days. I'm sure it was that many. And every time I went to watch, there was at least maybe 400 people, I would say, sat on watching, scanning the CPD QR codes. And there was some really good topics in there as well. Dave was sat with me with Curtis from the ECA, and they were like, we're watching this one because they're talking about the draft for public comment and the changes that are coming, and we want to make sure they're not giving away too much about what's going to end up in the book there. But yeah, it was really interesting. Craig O'Neill was on that one from the IET. Michael Peace was there as well. It was lots of interesting chat.
They had the whole team out on the IET stand, didn't they? Mark Coles was there, John Peckham was there. It was a good showing from them. And yeah, I watched the EICR coding one that Dave and Darren done, and that's always good for debate, isn't it? Like that's EICR coding's guaranteed to get you going. I think Darren said that was the most popular one, surprisingly, that was adhered to. But yeah, and I met Dave for the first time in person, although we've done the podcast together. It's awkward that he chokeholded me and took me around the back and beat me up, but apart from that, he was a nice guy.
He's an absolute unit, is Dave. He's a monster.
He needs to eat more steak and do more training. That's what he needs to do.
He sat on like 3 of the little stools to watch the tech talk, and luckily Curtis was at the end because he's on the small side. But Dave, with his muscles, I was sat on Curtis's knee.
Yeah, he's huge, absolutely huge. He can never get, if we go into an event or whatever, he can't wear a suit because he can't get one that fits him. Nobody makes one that fits him. You'd have to have one custom made because you can't get it over his shoulders. It's funny.
He was on good form anyway. He seemed to be enjoying it. I think he'd just gone there in his capacity as Dave. I don't think he was presenting anything with the ear.
No. I mean, originally we were going to do some bits and pieces with Darren. Obviously I think he used BPG4 for the coding part of it. So we were going to do that. But due to other bits and pieces that were going on at the time, it never kind of got sorted. Very similar to the installer show, because I'm popping up Tuesday, but again, we got asked to do quite a bit of stuff there. But on the the Wednesday and the Thursday, we've got some technical writing training in the office for 2 days, and it was already pre-arranged. So we weren't able to do that. But I'm going to be popping down on the Tuesday because I'm interested in seeing the stuff that they've done from last year, because they've got a dedicated part for electrical now, haven't they? Whereas last year it was kind of a bit spread. There was like a dancing arena where I saw you. And
were you up there?
He was dancing. He was up there.
I was, unfortunately.
It was kind of spread out everywhere, wasn't it? And we did a presentation last year, but where that particular seminar theatre was, there was nobody in that area. It was kind of heating engineers and whatever, and it was all too spread out. But apparently they're going to try and focus the electrical part more in one area, and know that ECA are doing some stuff. Our good friend Mr. Cranis and Curtis are going, aren't they? NIC are doing some stuff. Sam. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and we'll definitely do some stuff next year. So
we've got a really good zone installer show. There's the World Skills Centre, there's the ECA area, and then we've got the Safe Isolation Stand and the Renewables podcast right there as well. So if you are there on Tuesday,
I'll be there Tuesday, yeah.
And you want to deliver any talks or anything, there'll be more than an opportunity for you to jump up and get your DJ set out.
Well, I'll be popping over to say hi because Mark stitched me up and volunteered me for a panel for one of the talks.
You are on a panel,
yeah.
But I think that's good. It's never been more in the last couple of years. I don't think our industry has never been more supportive. Don't get me wrong, there's lots of negative stuff, but I'd like to think we extinguish that with all the positivity and everything, all the good stuff that's going on in various organisations and individuals. And I think there's some really good stuff at the moment. Some good people in some high up important places. New people that are coming through, like Curtis and Craig O'Neill, and Steve at Napit and Andy, and everyone's kind of working together. I think it's really, really good. It's all positive stuff. I love that, because then when negative comes up, it doesn't matter, because we don't need to talk about that because this is what we're doing. We're not talking about it. This is what we're actively trying to do and push together. Do you know what I mean? So it's good. It's really good.
And if you taking it back to CEF Live, it was my first time at CEF Live. I didn't manage to make it 2 years ago. It was a really good event. And if you're ever saying you can't get access to the information, I'll tell you now, I spent hours sat in the IET stand talking to Mark, Michael, Craig, John Becker. They will sit there all day and answer your questions and have those conversations. So if you're ever saying you can't get access to the people making the changes or you don't understand, then you're just probably not trying hard enough, because I reckon I got an award for boring them for the longest time of their day.
They were so giving with their time. I think I hassled Michael Peace because I'd read his article that he must have published the day before. I stayed at the Novotel in Coventry, and I was bored on my own, and Michael's article popped up. I think it was about, what was it about? It was about live testing. So I was asking him about that the next day, and he spent 20 minutes just chatting to me about that. And he's obviously got his presentations and stuff, really busy guy. And I just thought, that was nice of him to do that. And yeah, they are really open to those conversations, aren't they? And my takeaway from CEF, outside of all the stands, there was loads of goodies and stuff. I think BG had a new battery system that looked quite interesting, so I was looking at that. Was the heat pump RCD that Hager had, and there was a tech talk on all of that. And I know there's people in the industry of things discussing it. We've got our views as installers that a lot of this should be in, and my view is it should be in the products. If we're needing to innovate to this level, we shouldn't be adapting switchgear to meet particular manufacturers' issues. But maybe that's a bit too simplistic of me. I don't mind saying that's my view because I can. But yeah, that was an interesting presentation on that.
My view on the heat pump RCD thing is, like I say, we should be given the guidance, because at the minute you've got a heat pump coming out, and this is solely my opinion and maybe my lack of understanding, but from what I understand currently, I know Hager's brought a heat pump specific RCD out, but leaving Hager aside, the general understanding I have is manufacturers do not specify explicitly what type of RCD they want protecting their heat pump and their equipment. And that is causing issues, because some people are saying if you put type A in, it won't give you the protection from the leakage. Some people are saying it must be type B. Some people are saying nothing at all, and you're having to just make your interpretation of that. And I, as someone who doesn't install them, I don't know how you make that interpretation, because ultimately it's not there. It's not clear in the manufacturer's instructions. So
I know from speaking with Sam, who does install heat pumps, that there's one manufacturer, I won't say who they are, but they do stipulate in their instructions that you have to install a type B RCD. And this caught him out on a job because he just thought you could use a normal type B RCD. But as it turned out, yeah, you couldn't. And he had to get one from, is it Diopki or Diopki?
Yeah.
I always say it wrong, but from them that did that. And it was like 350, 400 quid or something, a cost he wasn't anticipating. Obviously, that then falls on the installer or the customer if you realise before you quoted the job. And, that's my issue with it, that if other heat pumps are out there in the marketplace that don't need those RCDs, they can clearly be built in a way where they don't need them, or they have it in them as a product. I think we've got our RCD types, haven't we? AC, A, F, B. Maybe I'm forgetting some others. There seems to be a new one all the time. Why have we got this heat pump one? I think, is it in Germany? There's B plus, which is like a VDE standard or something like that. So it all gets quite messy. I just think we should push this back at product standards and tell them to make this stuff better.
Well, I personally think it's a lack of manufacturers' information, because you go, well, one heat pump needs a type B, and I don't understand this, so someone might come on and tell me exactly why I've got this wrong. But in my simplistic head, one heat pump needs a type B because of leakage. Another manufacturer's heat pump, to me, cannot be that different that it makes that much less leakage. So does that also need a type B? So because it's not telling you, is it enough engineering judgment without the product standards to say, well, we went type A because that's what the regs say for RCDs currently is type A. But if you're not getting the information from manufacturer instructions and it's not right, how do you do that? And I know there's an element of design and engineering judgment, but is one manufacturer potentially pricing themselves out of the market for doing it right when everybody else is staying quiet, hoping that people put the cheaper RCDs in to then not have compliant installs, which in turn, the sinister side of me would say they'll tell you you've voided warranty if anything goes wrong. They'll tell you it's not installed properly. And to go at that conversation a little bit almost feels like we go back to a Zappy RCD install situation as far as whether you can use the inbuilt RCDs to the chargers or not. Is it a ploy? I'm sure it's not. But should there be more information on this stuff? I definitely think there should, because as installers, we need to know.
I don't trust these manufacturers, Craig, and I think there's something in what you've just said there. And a lot of the time when they're stipulating these RCDs, my first question back to them would be why, if I've installed a circuit in a way that it didn't need RCD protection, why are you telling me this has got to have one? Is it because you're worried about the equipment in an outdoor area? Maybe fair enough. Or is it because you're worried about the electronics that are a bit budget in your kit going wrong, and an RCD can look after that a bit by tripping out to stop that? You can detect that problem earlier on than those electronics failing. So I think there's elements in there of that. And as always, it's installers who are stuck in the middle of trying to sort it all out, and we'll be the ones who get the blame when it doesn't play out quite how it should be done, which is frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I started to look at this before I went on holiday, and this is where you've got several standards that cross over. So there is a standard, BS ENIEC 60335-2-40 2024 plus Amendment 11 2024, which is household and similar electrical appliances for safety. Now, Part 2-40 is particular requirements for electrical heat pumps, air conditioners, and dehumidifiers. So you've got to consider that some of the parts of this standard will also apply to air conditioners then and dehumidifiers. Now, within this standard, it says the installation instructions for appliances that are intended to be permanently connected to fixed wiring and have a leakage current not exceeding 10 milliamps shall state that the installation of a residual current device having a rated residual operating current not exceeding 30 milliamps is advisable. So that standard is telling the manufacturer that within their instructions, that must be there. It goes on to say, for appliances not accessible to the public, so not accessible, and which are intended to be permanently connected to fixed wiring, which 10 milliamps, same thing, the installation instructions shall specify the rating of the residual current device to be installed. So not only have they got to tell you that one needs to be fitted or it's advisable, but they've got to tell you what rating. It then says, for appliances not accessible to the general public, the restrictions for the installation location shall be described in the installation instructions. So it goes beyond 7671, obviously, but 7671 tells us that we must take account, or we shall take account of manufacturer's instructions. And this is a number of standards that apply to air conditioners and heat pumps. And that's what Hager have, to be fair to them, they found this information out and put this lot together. But it should be in the manufacturer's information, and it's not, is it?
Kudos to Hager for doing that. I think they're in a fair play to them. They've done the R&D and come up with the product. My issue is that we've got Type B 30 milliamp RCDs. They're on the shelf. Manufacturers should make kit that works with them. That's kind of. I've got no issue with it being in the instructions. It's this whole extra level of RCD that doesn't currently exist.
No,
we've had it with like pen faults and other bits and pieces. It's all this stuff that keeps coming down the chain to installers.
It'd be a departure from 7671, and as a designer, you'd have to.
Well, that was the interesting one, Richard. At the CEF Tech Talk, Hager said that it wouldn't be a deviation or departure from BS 7671 using a BHP RCD or whatever they're calling it, that it would satisfy BS 7, which I thought didn't make sense.
I suppose my question on that would be...
But when you look... Go on, say again, Craig, sorry.
I was going to say, my question on that would be, there's a recommendation in the regs, isn't there, about not exceeding 9 milliamps of leakage on that.
Exactly,
So if it's got 10 milliamps of leakage, how are you now allowing that exceeding? I know it's just a recommendation, and I don't know enough about heat pumps, but
no,
it must be there for a reason, right? We're not putting stuff in the regs just for fun.
No.
Like, so I'd be keen to know how Hager, and I'd welcome the conversation because I'm genuinely intrigued to learn. This is not about Hager. Hager have just been the ones that have brought something out to talk about, so it's a conversation, fair play to them. I'd be keen to know how they're addressing that sort of recommendation, or whether actually it's just been said that it's a recommendation and not one that's been considered. But Hager, I suppose, can say that as a manufacturer. As an installer stroke designer, are we able to say that's not considered?
What's 1 milliamp between friends?
Yeah.
But no, you're right, Craig. You're right.
Yeah, it's a good question. And the device is four modules wide. It's quite a wide.
It's a beast.
It's a beast. You know, we've got one in the office. They very kindly sent us one because we started to look at this a month or so ago, and I haven't come back to it yet. But I've got some more digging to do and try and put all the pieces together because, you know, as the designer, which way do you turn? And ultimately, there's a cost to it, isn't there? And is it actually required? And actually, should it be mitigated or, you know, built into the equipment itself? You could argue it could. I mean, I don't know how much a heat pump is, but they're not cheap. They've got to be thousands, haven't they?
Yeah,
So
thousands.
8-10 grand for one of these things, surely it should all be built into it. You know, it should have sufficient protection in it to not require one of these expensive devices.
There was nothing in that product standard which says we can't just put it on a Type A because the milliamp leakage is the same.
Yeah, that would come down to what they were stipulating in the instructions, I suppose.
Yeah,
and, I mean,
that's right.
The innovation of Hager, I think, is real good. The presentation they did was fine. I think it's, you know, they brought a product out to solve a problem. Fair play to them. My issue was around it being said that it satisfied BS 7671 because it's actually a Type B RCD with something bolted into it. So they were still calling it that and saying it wouldn't be a deviation, where if you used a B plus from the German market that is to a VDE standard or something, that would be a deviation. And that was one of the things that spiked my chain of thought, thinking, really? So that was one I wanted. It got me thinking.
Yeah.
As the deviation, the fact that it might not have a BS number in the UK,
most likely,
VDE standards. I wonder if, not putting Richard on the spot, but as a question, whether he could see if Hager would want to come on and have that conversation, because I'd genuinely be intrigued to have it. It's not. It's not a conversation to say they're wrong. It's a conversation to say, I do not understand. Please come and talk to us about.
I'm sure
us understand.
All three polls are very good there, to be fair, but I'm sure that they'd be more than happy to come and explain, because they did a little thing on this with just me and Dave that we, you know, I know they're presenting at all the elects and stuff, but we haven't managed to get to any of them. But they did a Teams call with us and went through it all. But I'm sure they'd be happy to do that. They're really good technical guys that are nice people. So yeah, I'll put the feelers out, and if they'd like to come on, why not? Yeah, we could ask them a few questions, couldn't we?
Just to help me understand it. I genuinely don't understand. It's the same when I think the conversations, and this will be in Mark's bag because he's the expert in this field, is, you know, RCDs, basic protection, fault protection, when inverters are done in installations, and does the inverter stop the devices working, and so on. There's a whole bit to delve into in that sort of realm, and maybe that could all be part of a sort of similar conversation as to how those devices operate, and could we actually even technically comply with the regs if the inverters are kicking out. There's a piece to talk about, I suppose, and look at with that sort of stuff. But you might have some answers already, Mark, and say I'm missing something. But how do we use these devices? Because these product standard devices, I'll call them, inverters, heat pumps, batteries, all of that, they're not recognised safety measures. So whatever they're doing with the electronics, we technically can't rely on it, and that's something I hope will come out of Amendment 4, because I don't have sight even of the committees that I do sit on. I'm not on JPL, so I don't have sight of Amendment 4, so it's all my opinion. The car charger situation, is that RCD any less safe because it's electronic? I don't know, but should we be recognising it potentially? Is that something we need to do with heat pumps and inverters and other advancements in technology? Is that something we should be looking at?
Yeah,
a starter question, I think.
I think definitely there is questions to be asked and answered there, Craig. I certainly don't have the answers. There's some inverters I'm aware of that'll sit quite happily on a 30 milliamp RCD while they've been powered, but as soon as they start putting power the other way back through it, they start tripping. So there's stuff there that's going on. We've been caught out with that before, and then the manufacturer will say, "Oh, you need 100 milliamp RCD." Like, well, that's great, but when we're looking at the regs, that ain't helping me.
With additional protection, yeah.
And then you've got gateway instructions where it's telling you to put an earth electrode in for the neutral earth bond relay, but then they leave the main earthing terminal totally in of its own accord, not linked to that once it's formed its TNS, because their inverters aren't switching over in the right way for your fault paths and ADS. And you only really find these things out when you start testing them after you've turned them on. Because you read the instructions, follow the instructions, put your earth rod here, put your earths here, and all the rest of it. Turn it into island mode. You start trying to probe it a little bit and make the RCDs operate, and you realise it doesn't work. Just like, all of these things pull us back to that central point of trusting what manufacturers are telling us, but also applying regulations as we're supposed to as well.
And then how do you protect against electric shock? And that was a question a very clever person asked me, and I was like, no, I don't install these things. I've got to think on my feet. And the only way I could think, which is not going to be the right answer or the best answer, was, are we going back to a bathroom of bond every bit of metal work and sort of going back to the 16th, 17th edition here to get round the fact that we maybe can't put RCD protection on anything with inverters or heat pumps? I don't know, because I don't install these things, but it's a consideration process to think about.
It gets even worse when you look at all the metal work around your class 2 wiring systems for your PV, and do you bond it? Is that going to cause you more of a problem if you get a fault in the other way to what you're trying to protect against? And it's an absolute mess at the minute from an installer's point of view, trying to, we want to deliver safe systems. We've spoke about it loads on our renewables podcast as well with this, and it must be really hard for the industry because you're across all of these topics, and there's this new thing that's blown up massively, and there's all this consistent innovation. Manufacturers are saying, well, this, and then other standards around the world are saying that, and you're trying to make it all fit in that BS 7671 envelope. And I honestly think it can. That's my current view. I don't think it can fit in there, and product standards need to be way more robust with this stuff to be allowed to be sold in the UK. That's the only real way to sort it out. That's just my view anyway.
But the caveat to that, I think, would be, who can afford to buy a £400 product standard for every bit of kit that comes out?
Oh, no one's doing that.
And at the same time, how can you have experts in this field of coming with solutions to these answers? There's lots of intelligent people in our industry. I'm not knocking anyone. This is just my hypothesis. How can you have an expert in something when it's pretty new? You almost need to be 20 years down the line to have the answer, don't you? But we can't afford 20 years down the line because people are going to have things happen to them between them. Sadly, but it will.
I was lucky enough to have been given an opportunity by Richard actually to speak to people of industry just from an installer's viewpoint. So I approached that with basically talking about every single thing I thought wasn't quite right, and put that forward to people who were way clever than me for them to bat around with and see if it was of any use. Because sometimes when you're in these committees and you're talking to manufacturers and you're among wise minds yourself, it's easy to lose sight of the person at the end of it all, trying to screw it onto people's walls and make it all work. So hopefully that was useful. And it was really good of you, actually, Richard, to let me get involved with that. And I think it's wise to get other installers doing that if you're not already.
Yeah, well, I put all the minutes together, but just before I went on holiday, obviously Stephen Devine is the chair, so I sent them across to Stephen just to make sure that he's happy with everything. But obviously I've only been back this week and I don't think he's in. But as soon as he approves them, sends them back, I'll send them out to all the members with a copy of your presentation and Dave's presentation. And of course, from that, there's a number of actions for quite a lot for us to do, but for a few other people to do. So that hasn't finished there. That's just the start. And it was very kind of you to do that. And I think it opened up a lot of eyes to a lot of our members of that particular forum to some of the issues that are being, presented, whether it's from crap work that's been installed by someone that you're having to go and tidy up, or, batteries that are in loss that shouldn't be lost. MCS issues around, withdrawing certain things, and that opened my eyes up a little bit. And again, manufacturers of equipment as well, so there's a lot of work to do there. And I know that we're going up to Griff's place in October So I think hopefully you're coming along to that, Mark, because he's got a lot of equipment that he's installed within his training facilities, G-Tech, where in island mode he's got 60, 70 volts between.
They've got the same EMA.
You know, so the problem is, as Craig quite rightly said, you know, potentially we're going to have, hopefully none, but potentially we're going to have a lot of dangerous installations, and we won't know they're dangerous until we lose supply and it goes into island mode. But you know, there's a lot of work for us to do in that space for sure. But you highlighted some really important issues, and you know, the roof mount systems and the bird cages around them, and all sorts of stuff that, you know, I wasn't aware of. But I'm a bit like Craig on that. I've never installed it, whereas Dave has put a lot of this stuff in, so he's more familiar with it than I am. But you know, it's going to certainly add value into our PV investigation fires and things that Dave's currently leading on. And of course, we're rewriting Best Practice Guide 3 because that needed a big update. So we're into that a little bit. So we'll be coming back to you on that, Mark, if you don't mind, because hopefully you'll have some input of your own and stuff to add into that. So some of the stuff that you spoke about in terms of, you know, it might not be regulation, whatever, but this is best practice. This is what we do. This is a good way to do this. Be aware of that. So a lot of that stuff will go into that guide because that's been revamped as we speak. So looking forward to get your input on that. But yeah, I mean,
so what's the point in all of that, though, gents? It's just 3 wires to be a spark, isn't it?
I wish it was just 3 wires. It's changed a bit since I started. It used to be 5 if you were unlucky, 3 most of the time. It's not like that anymore.
4 if you ordered the wrong cable.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's I mean, the parasitic coupling one's another interesting one. I mean, we've been checking for that really since the NAPIC guys started sharing a lot of that again. I'm a nerd for these things, so I thought that's interesting. And
I'm gonna have a look.
You start looking for it. But we've been out to a few old systems recently, mainly to put bird guard around them because they've got issues with birds nesting, and once they've moved out, they want to get them surrounded. But yeah, we check for voltages between the scaffold and the panel frames, and we're finding it a lot of times. We're checking it on new systems that we're fitting, and it's never really there. But that's not to say in 5-10 years it couldn't be once they've been out in the elements for a bit, and that these fit systems that are 15 years old went fine the day they went in, and they've subsequently developed this issue. So, and then it's what do you do about it when it is there?
Yeah, don't put it use drones,
rubber gloves.
Yeah, crikey, yeah,
and
rubber suits.
And amongst all of this, to add an extra layer of fun, you're mixing AC and DC together, right? So you bring a whole different set of information into it, because all this still taught in colleges from when I was last there. Was it still all AC we're talking about? There's not really any conversation going on about DC.
No.
Yeah, DC distribution at the minute with PV is a big one. And that's something that we need to get into the education, traditional apprenticeship, as well as the domestic electrician one, which does cover it. I think that's really important because it is a different beast, and it's not simple.
It covers it, but I would pose a question, not to dig tutors out, but to pose the industry to do more stuff to help them. I think Craig O'Neill's looking at something on this, but
yes,
how many of the tutors understand DC installs? Because most of them in teaching now probably haven't done this.
No.
And one of the things we want to do here is open this space up for tutors. So when we're running our courses, we'll put a space for them to come along and do the course for nothing, so they can get that. Even if they just want to come and do the day's experience with the installers when they're here and come and sample what actually happens and how this stuff gets installed, that'll be free for tutors whenever they want to come and do it.
Yeah, I think that's so important. That is, I mean, that's so kind of you as well, because certainly from my experiences in FA and within, you know, private training providers, you don't get time to, you know, do anything, never mind update yourself. And it's no good looking in a book, you know, that's great, but you need to be doing it. You need to be out there talking to people, you know, picking the stuff up, installing it, looking at instructions and all that. You need to be part of it, because otherwise, what are you actually learning? You're learning nothing. And whatever you've learned to pass an exam and then forget it. You might have the certificate, the bit of paper, but actually, what do you know about it? Not much.
And I think that's where we need to chat about, because we skipped over the sort of what Mark's been up to. He's not been on holiday looking white. He's covered in paint on the walls that he's
Magnolia.
I've got a right suntan at the minute. I've been out on the roof.
Yeah, he's gone through about 50 litres of Magnolia, isn't he?
Yeah, we have got some paint. Fortunately, Lucy's been painting a lot of the floor. She's been helping us out here, so she's on with that presently. But it's all the community around it. Like Sam was up on a job up in Scotland, and he pulled out a Viridian in-roof system that had been put on a typical new build. I think they had 3 in-roof panels, token gesture. He'd been and ripped that out to do it properly. And he's like, "Oh, it's all come out okay. Do you want it for your space? You can have an in-roof kit." I mean, that would cost probably 1,200-1,500 quid to buy and get it. So that's been donated in. We've got other installers who donate in some of these weird shaped panels of the past. We've got slates, big pallet of slates got delivered. And this is just stuff people are sending for free because they want to be part of this kind of community aspect around the centre. So we've got installers who are volunteering their time, wanting to come and help other people learn this stuff. And we mentioned right at the start of the podcast about potential new host, and it's a friend of all of ours. And it's little Chris, or Richard's got a special name for him, which we won't repeat on the show, but he's going to be coming on to have some chats with us once he's retired from Riverside College. Yeah. And I think that's a great addition to our little crew. He's agreed to do more than just a guest appearance and come and have some chats with us on a regular basis, because he must have some stories to tell and knowledge to share.
Yeah. And he's got a unique way on his teaching. He still teaches topics in a great way, and you can see a lot of what he does on the eFix channels. He's been working with them. We've seen him at CEF as well, and I think me, you, Chris, and Michael had a stand-around chat for a little bit, and we posed some interesting and fun conversations, and we all walked away head scratching, I think, not really sure who had the answer, but sort of just, it's nice to see other people coming and chewing the fat effectively, and he will bring a set of knowledge that dates a few years. And with Richard's nickname, I think it starts with vinegar, but I'm not sure what the next part of that comes back to. So
we'll not get anyone in any trouble tonight. No, that was that. I think we decided after that conversation, Craig, that both you and Chris are getting your names in the next book. I think that's why it played out, that one. So the next version of the regs is going to have your name in the front.
No, not for us. We're just the minions. We just ask the questions, and the clever people find the answers.
That's right.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting Chris involved anyway. It's going to be good.
Yeah, he's a good lad. As you've both quite rightly said, fountain of knowledge, old school sparks. He's just a good lad, isn't he? And he's devoted a lot of his life into teaching. And he still does now, doesn't he? And I think he'll find it quite tough to retire altogether. So I think he's going to do a few bits here and there for different people. But it'll be a pleasure to grab him, because he's really, really good lad. It's good.
Yeah, he's volunteered as an ambassador, I think, for the Electrical Industries charity, and he's going to do some work with eFix as well, I think.
Yeah,
if I can grab him and persuade him to come here and do some bits, I will be doing that as well.
I'm sure he will. Yeah, he's good, really good.
Is there anything else either of you two want to cover in this chat? Because I realise we've had our hour slot.
Well, mine is just that question we were going to pose, which we'll maybe pause and leave people to think about for the next time. And Richard wasn't privy to this conversation, so we'll put him right on the spot for this. We were chatting at CEF Live, and one of the questions I got asked was about something I think is a problem in the regs that's maybe missed. And what I came up with was an RCD floor box. You might have a bit of underfloor track. Let's say you've got 12 RCD floor boxes on it. Each one has 2 double sockets. So we're talking about 24 RCDs now. Where does your circuit end? And where do you record the ZS readings and the RCD test results of the 24 floor boxes?
Yeah. You'd have to record each one individually, surely, wouldn't you?
But there's nowhere on the certificate.
Well, the certificate's a model form, so it's something to work from.
Is one answer. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's
how many people do, because some people will argue it's plug and play, and your circuit ends at the live end to the track, which I fundamentally disagree with. I don't mind putting that out there. But is it clear?
If you took that approach, then you're definitely not going to have any old school terminology pat testing done on that floor box, are you? If it was connected equipment, no one's ever doing that. No. And if it's not falling in the wheelhouse of your initial verification or EICRs, it's just going to sit there relying on the RCD to look after it in the socket front, isn't it? So
where the sockets connect to the busbar system, is that accessible to anyone? Can anyone go and unplug that socket from the busbar?
Not without taking flooring up. So I would say it's fixed wiring.
Fixed installation then, isn't it? So
100%.
Of course it is. Yeah,
But
You just
everyone
need the 24 boxes to record your RCD test
That's
result.
what you got to do, haven't you? Because you're relying upon that protected device for that socket. They're all individual, aren't they? If one of them was to fail, you haven't recorded those values, then how are you going to explain that?
You need a really sharp pencil to squeeze it all in that little box.
and it's how is that checked? Because if you put on your certificate, do you put the final caveat to this, not to really get an answer, but to consider for people, and we'll maybe dig into it more because it's something I'm putting an article together about. Is was it the 18th edition where RCD sockets were not recognised and it was changed in one of the amendments?
Was it 4.2?
I think is it 7266 or something? I want to say.
Yeah, 7.2 something. Yeah,
I could be wrong with the code, but they weren't recognised, and now they are. But are they fixed wiring? Is grey, and not to me, but people will argue it. Because you go the other way and you go, well, what about LCM systems for lighting in the ceiling? Where should you take your ZS readings from? The LCM or from the light fitting that's under 15 metres away? And then where you record the results and how you record them, potentially open to interpretation again. And if they're not being tested, but they weren't recognised, are they still suitable for continued use?
Yeah.
I don't know. Why were they discontinued from being allowed, and then why are they now allowed? I don't know the answer to all of that, but
good questions, mate. All of those. Like the LCM one's an interesting one because it's the same principle, but for lighting, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got to lift a ceiling tile to get to it, and you're going to have a long length of cable off where it plugs into a fixed piece of equipment that's in a ceiling grid, maybe.
And that opens up a whole different world of regulations. If you think about something, I think will be close to Richard's heart. Adequate support of cables for fire. Do you need to ban those cables? Do you need to metally fix them out of the LCM? Are they fixed wiring or are they not? I would say they do need banded, they do need fixed. But how many lighting systems do you see LCM pod cables just lashed across ceiling tiles?
The same as the light fittings themselves. Have they got a separate, in effect, a gripple around it? So in case the grid, collapses, which is nothing to do with us, that luminaire, that piece of fixed equipment is part of the fixed wiring, so that should be supported as well. Don't some of them? It's been a long time since I put them in, but don't they actually come with like a gripple type metal?
Some do, yeah.
I think it depends on manufacturer.
Do.
Right. But how many people do it? You're quite right in what you say. Yeah, good. Yeah, great.
It's on our snagging list for here. There's no cables in any containment above any of these ceilings. And that was one of the first things we looked at because we're paranoid about people coming in this building, as on our list to sort out. So I think that's a couple of weeks' time on the little timeline we've got. So that'll be me, head above the ceiling, screwing stuff into metal bits to try and stop it all falling down if the worst happens. But there's been no thought into that when it was first installed.
Well, I've seen conversations recently, and I will end because I know we're going on a long one here and we'll come back to this topic, but I've seen conversations recently where people have said, like Richard said, it's a plastic law plug that's holding up the ceiling grid. So if the fire gets to that and that goes, how are you adequately supporting anything if you're not banding straight to the slab? Because people fix to the lashings of the ceiling grid coming down. But if the grid comes down, that cable's not then supported, neither is the fitting, neither is anything else. I think, off the top of my head, law plugs and stuff all have like a 30-minute burn time or something to them, even if they're plastic. I think they do go through some testing, but it's all design considerations to be thought about, isn't it? And if you're taking over one of these spaces like what Mark is, it's got to be considered.
It is in a classroom environment where you might want the fire services to come in and rescue people if something horrible's happened. You need to make sure that they've got a good chance of doing that safely. And again, people getting out in an emergency. It's been driving me mad, Craig, to be honest. I'm really worried about all of this. So we are probably going over the top, but you need to make sure you get that right, don't you?
Well, are you? Because children, disabled people, elderly, so on and so forth, office blocks, stairwells, I know this isn't necessarily part of Grenfell and, God rest everyone's souls and that tragedy, but if all these things are considered, then you might stop some of these tragedies.
That's right.
And what we say is over the top, actually, should it be over the top or should it just be the questions that are getting asked?
True. I guess it's where you sit on that risk scale, isn't it? And some people are quite happy to skirt the razor blade thin edge of what might be acceptable, whereas others want to be well away from that, having a clean conscience and sleeping at night under all circumstances. So there's no easy answers with it, is there, I suppose?
No.
Let us know what you think. Tell us, is it fixed wiring or not?
Yeah.
Do you support it?
It's part of the fixed wiring, in my opinion, definitely.
I agree.
I'll be getting Matty to get ZSs at the end of every single one. Don't you worry. Don't you worry about that. Anything you want to add, Richard, before we end this one?
No. Lots of exciting things coming up. I'm looking forward to coming up to see your new place. I'm looking forward to that. So whenever, there's an opportunity to nip into Grimsby or wherever I went last time, I had me fish and chips in the rain. I'll pop up and see you and come and support you again in any way that I can. Try and get Dave out of Stafford, out of his hibernation, because we don't like to go far. But yeah, it'd be a pleasure to come and help out in any way I can. So I'm looking forward to that. Just trying to think what else is going on. There's a solar and storage, isn't there? I'll see you at Installer Show. I think there's a solar and storage later in the year. Me and Dave will be at Elex in Coventry.
They're in September. I think it's September the 11th for the Elex at Coventry, which is the big one.
That's it. We'll be there.
27th for solar and storage. I think I want to say something like that.
Going to pop along there, but yeah, look forward to seeing you at the Installer Show. Might be there on Tuesday. I'll bring my dancing shoes.
Mr. Cranis is organising something on the Tuesday evening, I think. So if you're able to stop,
yeah, I'll be there. Are we going to the place where we went last time with the fancy dress box? There's lots of pictures of me and Darren.
Oh God, yeah, that was over near the casino or something. I can't remember now.
Yeah, I'll message him then. Yeah, I'll be there on Tuesday. So yeah, I'll come and have a light aperitif afterwards.
Exactly, we'll behave ourselves.
Yeah.
Enjoyed that, guys. I've really enjoyed catching up with you both. It's been a long while, and I think we should come back and go through that design question that Craig posed right at the start. I think that'd be an interesting one to explore. Thank you both for your time and therapy around these subjects we've discussed. I'll try and get this released tomorrow. And for anyone who's listened along, if you've got any questions you want to ask us, pop them back in the comments. We don't do these as often as we once did, but we'll try and get back to a bit more of that if we can. The engagement around the prior episodes is still there, by the way. We're getting lots of views and comments and downloads, which is really nice. So we'll try and get back to that regular content. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you on the next one.
Cheers all.
See you soon, guys.